We'll play.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Alicia. This is Fong over here, and Dr. Jackson Gross. We are all research biologists. A lot of what we do involves researching on invasive aquatic species, mostly fish. And we were asked our opinions about whether we consider human beings invasive to the Americas. So we're here to give you our very official scientific opinions. Should I go first?
Please do.
Okay, so I'll go first, and I think that my opinion is really based on what your definition of an invasive species is. I don't think that there's really one specific, all encompassing definition for an invasive species. In my mind, the definition is a species, animal species, that has sort of taken over an environment and is damaging the ecosystem and hurting the natural environment around them. So, in that definition and on those terms, I would consider human beings invasive to North America and South America and many other places. What about you guys?
Awesome. So I kind of follow on what Alicia says, but I kind of break my opinion into two ideas. So the first being, the definition you use, and there are some organizations out there that international and within the states that legally define what an invasive species is, and typically it's some sort of introduced species that has economical or ecological effects. In my opinion, just from a very natural, global, biological standpoint, uh, the fact that we have a huge, tremendous impact and the effects we've had on the ecology, or trees, we're tearing them down, greenhouse gases, we're all polluting, our environment. But from a kind of higher critical thinking standpoint, which humans have the inherent ability to do, we also see that humans can conserve, and so yeah, we might be damaging our environment, but we also have the critical thinking ability to try to conserve it. We destroy trees, or we plant trees, but overall, in the states, in the Americas, I will consider us somewhat of an invasive species, just because if you imagine Americas without human migration a few thousand years ago, it might be completely different than what it would be naturally.
I think the idea that humans are considered an invasive species a preposterous idea. It would be saying that Homo sapiens migrating from Africa into Asia and Europe are invasive species to Europe and Asia, and so on and so on and so on. And the idea that you would separate out humans, which are just some other life form on this planet, an invasive species, an anthropogenic concept. You think about bacteria and things flying across the oceans and landing on other places, from Africa to Central America, or things flying across the oceans from Asia into North America. Are those invasive species, or is that the natural course of the world we live in? So the idea that we are invasive to the environment. Do we change the environment? Sure, but does a microbe change its environment, and do they expand and change everything that drastically? I would argue that there's a greater impact to the world than we do. So I just think that the idea, if you also actually look into some of the work by Aldo Leopold and Sand County Almanac, I think he writes a very eloquent essay on discussing the role of humanity, or humans, on the ecosystem, and that the idea that to separate one from the other is also a preposterous idea, that we must consider both. And I think your teacher could very easily find that essay in the Sand County Almanac, and be a good reading exercise for you.
So, Dr. Jackson Gross, how would you define invasive species?
An invasive species, is a word that we created for ourselves, something that actually causes a change to the environment from which it was not from. But that's what emigration and immigration and our system, that's the way the world works. So, like I talked about, things across the ocean and doesn't make it invasive. Um, so I, the idea, like I said, the idea that humanity is just another life form that spreads across the earth. It's one thing to be transplanted there versus emigration. It's just at scale at which we're thinking about. So anyway, I leave it at that.
All right. Thoughts and wisdom brought to you by scientists.